Hello and welcome. My name is Vanessa Mary of Marytime Arts. Thank you so much for purchasing your at-home paint party kit. Now, in your box, you open that up, we have custom colors for you in these little cups. I'll show you what colors those are in your video. You can open those cups up and use that lid as a little mixing spot for your paints. Or when we get started here too, I have this piece of plastic which works great for mixing your colors, and when you are done you can just wipe it clean and reuse that. You'll see in my videos I use a styrofoam plate. If you have a styrofoam or a paper plate, that works great too for mixing colors. Now the other supplies in your kit are a custom curated selection of brushes. You'll each have 3 brushes. I'll tell you what brush I'm using. You can use any of these brushes at any time, change them up. You don't always need to use the same one that I'm using, but I'll talk to you and show you which brush I'm using in my videos. You also then have your 8x10 canvas panel. Now some of you may have purchased an extra add-on of an easel. If you did not purchase the add-on of an easel and you don't have an easel at home, we're going to turn our box into an easel to paint with. So I'm going to take everything out of my box, and I'm just going to take that lid of my box, fold it over and inside my canvas, or inside my box, excuse me, so that it can take my canvas right there on the inside. So that will work as my easel. All my mess will stay inside my box, and I can have all my supplies off to my side. The only supplies that you need from home are a cup with water in it to clean off your brushes, and some paper towel to wipe off your brushes in between colors. The video will show you exactly how to create one of these 2 beautiful paintings. I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for joining me. Have a great time painting. Okay, so let's get started on painting our beautiful lake scene here. Now, I have this beautiful light lilac-y color in my sky and again in my lake. So once again, I'm going to be mixing those colors. You can mix directly on that piece of plastic that was included in your kit or inside the lids of each paint cup, but make sure you have some place to mix. Today I'm going to be using a paper plate to mix my colors. Now the colors that we have in our kit today, I have a fluorescent orange, a yellow, a white, a bright red, a chrome blue, phthalo green, and black. Again, to get my lilacs, I'm going to be mixing those 3 colors together, so white, blue, and red make my beautiful light purpley lilac color. Now, in order to get started, the first thing I need to do is get some of these bright colors in my sky. I want to get some of these light yellows, these oranges and pink colors in my sky before I go in and get all of the purple up there. I also will need to let that dry just for a second, because if I don't allow that to dry and I go into my orange with my purple, I'm going to get a little bit of a brown, and I don't want that in my sky. So first things first, I'm coming into my plate and I'm going to pick up just a little yellow. Now you could also, right again on that piece of plastic or in your lid, pick up some yellow and white and just come in and choose a few spots in your sky to get those beautiful light colors. I'm going to get some in there. Notice I'm doing quick brush strokes with my biggest of brushes. I'm not really paying too much attention to being careful and getting smooth strokes. I just want to get that color up there. Now, I'm not going to wipe off my brush. I don't have much yellow on there. I'm going to leave my brush just the way it is, and I'm going to take a little bit of my orange and again mix it in. So if you're using that plastic, you would put a little bit of those colors down on your plastic and mix them in together right on that plastic. I'm going to get some of my orange up here. Now, that's a really bright orange. If I want to soften it just a bit, I would come in, add a little bit more white to it, give it just another quick swirl, soften that up so it's a really pale peach tone, and again, come in and give some quick brush strokes. Now I'm brushing right into my yellow, so I don't have any harsh lines. It's a nice smooth transition between all my colors. Again, add as much of this tone as you like. If you like some more yellow coming through in your sky, you might choose to add a little bit more yellow. I like this nice soft orange, and then I'm going to make a little bit of a pink tone too with this. Now in order to make the pink tone, I'm just going to come in and get some red and mix that right in that mixture that I had. And now that's pretty bright red, so to soften it again, a little bit of white right in there. So again, you can be mixing these colors right on top of that plastic sheet that you have or in your lid. I chose to grab a styrofoam plate. A paper plate, a styrofoam plate works well too if you have something like that handy. Now I'm going to come in and add a few strokes of this pink color in my sky. I have some up here. I have a few strokes. Notice I am going into my yellow. I am doing big brush strokes through it all, not stopping at the edge. Now I am going to come in, clean my brush off really well. I want to get all that pink out of there. I'm going to take my paper towel and dry my brush off. And now I'm going to start mixing my purple. Now when I showed you my plate last time, my green got a little bit into my blue. So I'm just going to be careful that I don't go into where the green and the blue had mixed a little bit. I'm going to pull up some red and some blue, give them a quick swirl together. Now if you like your purple a little bit more blue toned than red toned, you're going to put a little bit more blue in. If you like it a little bit more on the red side, put a little bit more red in. And then I'm going to get quite a bit of white and give it a swirl into there. I just want to test out what color I have here before I go in and start painting my whole canvas. So I'm going to test it out. My color's pretty bright. I think I'm going to soften it just a little bit more. So a little bit more white in my color. And you can also add a little bit more red or blue if you like that tone showing through a little bit. Now I know if I come into my orange, like I said before, I am going to get kind of an ugly color there. It's going to turn a little bit brown. So I want to be very cautious not to turn this brown. I've made sure that those strokes that I did before are all dry. And I'm just going to come brush lightly into them. If your orange is still wet, give it a second to dry. You don't want to rush this. Take your time. Notice I'm doing quick strokes. I'm letting that brush do all that work for me. It's getting little wispy marks right at the edge there. Now if you run out of paint, go ahead and mix some more up, and you can keep going and getting that color off. Now remember, this is personal preference. If you want more pink in your sky or you want more blue in your sky, go ahead and add more pink or blue. I like mine having kind of this nice combination of those colors. You can see I put a little bit more blue in that stroke. But you can go and do as many of those colors as you want, or as few. So once I've come in and I've gotten most of my sky covered, I do recommend you take your color and you go up on those side edges, that top edge of your canvas, cover everything you can so that this painting is ready to hang on your wall when you're done. Well, my purple is still wet here. I want to soften some of these edges. So you can still see I have harsh edges in there. I want to soften those a little bit. Now, I have a little too much purple in my brush, so I'm just going to take my paper towel, wipe it off a little bit, and I'm going to pick up some white. And now I'm going to kind of scrub my white right on those edges. See how I'm just shaking my brush, kind of giving it a little swirl? I'm blending in some of these edges here. Now, my white and my yellow again, I have them on a plate. They're really close to each other. I mixed that white and yellow earlier together. If you have that mixture still, you can pick up a little bit of that white and yellow. I'm going to pick up just a little bit more white with mine. And I'm going to come and swirl that in too. So just softening those colors, softening those edges a little bit. I want to make a nice transition here. Now a little bit more white will help if you have that orange that's still a little bit wet. Remember, we don't want to turn it brown. And I'm just kind of scrubbing my canvas here blending those colors in. I'm letting my brush do most of that work for me. Really just carefully brushing it in. And when this dries, if I want to add more of my yellows back in, or I look at it and I think, oh, I didn't like that I put too much purple over here, I can come change it. Now I've just got a little bit more purple on my brush. I can blend with the purple. Again, I'm doing the scrubbing motion sideways, where I'm just quickly shaking my hand a little bit back and forth as I apply this paint. So this kind of clouds or wisps coming through. I'm using white, I'm using that light yellow. You can use a little bit of purple in there. Just make sure that whatever you are doing, it's really dry in that background. If my canvas has all that orange wet again, just a reminder, that is going to turn a little bit brownish, so just give it a second to dry. Go back in with those light colors. Really blend out any harsh edges. Now, if you want more pink back in there, or if you look at it and you wanted more of those peach tones back in there, again, you're going to let it dry just a little bit, and then you can blend some more of those colors in, just doing that little shaking motion. So I'm really just shaking my hand like I've had too much coffee, back and forth, using the tip of my brush. Now, once you get that sky in, we aren't going to get the mountains quite yet, but take a look. My mountains cover some of my sky. If I have something going on in my sky that I really love, maybe right in here, I'm putting a little white so you can see where I'm talking about. Maybe I really like that area and I don't want to cover it. Now, I don't have to cover it if I don't want to. I can make sure my mountains move around that in a different direction. So take a look before we go into our mountains. See what you have going on. Again, you can come back in and add a little more detail. Maybe I want some blue in my sky or a deeper purple. You can go ahead and add more detail so that then when you do add those mountains, you know they're not getting covered. Oops, I have too much blue on my brush. I was trying to go into a little bit of a purple color here, just to show one or two more strokes here. Now I've gone into a much darker purple. This time I didn't add as much white, just to show you can play with color in here, get a lot of different tones in there. Now, I know that's a little too dark for me, so I'm just going to pick up some white, soften it up, but I was showing you that you have a lot of option, a lot of possibility here. So if you like that color and you want a lot of color in your sky, go ahead, don't be afraid of color. So you can add a lot more color into your sky, make it really vibrant. For me, I'm going to leave my sky right about there. I think it has a great texture, looks really nice. I know when I come in to get my mountains, they're going to come up and cover some of this up. So take a look. Again, maybe you've lost some of the colors you want in your sky. Maybe I need a little bit more yellow up top here, so that then when I paint my sky in, or my mountains in, excuse me, I won't be losing all that beautiful texture up there. So take a look, take a step back, make sure you have things where you want them to be. You can always go and change and add more color to it. So right in about there, I'm going to leave mine. I think if I give it a second to dry, I can bring out some of those colors, make them a little bit brighter. But right now, I think it looks great. I want to come in and start getting my lake in. My mountains are going to cover part of my lake too. So my mountains are going to come into my sky and down towards my lake. But my lake is different strokes. It's still kind of that light purpley tone. This time I added a tiny bit more blue. And I did back and forth smooth strokes with that. So right now, if you look at my brush, there's not much paint on it. I am going to clean it off though, make sure I get any of that yellow out of it. Really make sure it's clean, wipe it off on your paper towel. And now I'm going to go ahead and back to my mixing. You may have that color still on your plate, you may have that color still on your lids if you were using the lids. I need to give myself a little bit more mixture of color here. I'm going to make this a little bit bluer, I said, than the sky. And you can see I kind of have three shades here now of purple. I have a dark purple, kind of a reddish, and my light purple. I can take any of those now and do nice smooth strokes back and forth. Now, as I get a little further down towards the bottom of my canvas, I'm going to lighten that color up. That's why I had a few different mixtures of it in. So big broad strokes, cover your canvas. Make sure you're filling it in all those little white little specks that might be popping through. Remember, we're going to be covering some of this up with mountains in the background here. So I'm just doing nice broad strokes across my canvas. And as I get a little further down, like I said, I'm just going to mix a little bit more of a white tone in. Now my bottom has this nice little arch. It really only comes up about a finger in the very middle, and then on the sides about 3 fingers. So about 3 fingers on the sides. I'm going to arch down. And again, if you need to mix up more color, if you're running out, go ahead and mix up more color. About 3 fingers on the side, down to about a finger. And that's going to be where our land comes in again with those beautiful wildflowers. So brush that paint in. Notice it's just ever so slightly lighter as I get closer to me. And again, this is personal preference. If you like that lighter tone, maybe you want to add more of that light tone into your painting. If you like those darker blues and darker purples, you might want to have more dark blues and purples. So you choose what you like for your colors. You have a bunch of colors to play with. And when you're mixing them, you can mix them to the tone you like. So I'm just going ahead and mixing some more color up, making sure I have all this brushed in. You can see that mine is more than one tone. It's perfectly fine to have a few different shades in there. It is water, it is picking up some reflections. I like all those different tones showing up in there. Now, I am going to come in and get my greens in. I'm going to rinse my brush off to get those greens in. And we're going to have the whole background ready to go. Again, rinsed all that purple out, wiped my brush off just to make sure I had all that color out. Now, our dark green here, this phthalo green, is a little too dark for what it looks almost black. It's a little too dark for what I want, so I'm actually going to come into my yellow again. I'm going to take just a little bit of yellow. Again, you can mix it in your lid, you can mix it on the piece of plastic. If you have a plate like me, go ahead and mix it on your plate. I'm going to make that a lighter green. Now I'm going to come in, and it's okay if it overlaps a little bit. We're going to have those beautiful wildflowers coming in, and that's going to take up part of our canvas. So I'm just going to come in, brush that in. If you want your greens a little bit darker, you can make them just a little bit darker in the corners. So once I get those sides, really make sure you're getting that bottom of the canvas. If we're painting out the edges, you'll also want to paint out that bottom edge of your canvas there too. Now I'm going to wait to paint out my bottom edge because I don't want it to stick to my easel, but I'm going to make sure I get all my sides covered here. And I want to make sure I'm overlapping just ever so slightly so that I don't have a space in between my water and my grass. Now I'm going to get just a tiny bit of black. Really, when I go in, I don't want much, so I'm just putting a tiny little trickle of black on my brush and mixing it in with my green. That's just going to give me a little bit darker of a green, and I'm going to take and brush just the corners with a little bit darker green. And again, I'm doing big, quick, broad strokes. So not perfectly smooth strokes right now. Okay, so our painting has a nice background right now. We're getting somewhere. It's starting to look the place we want it to look. I'm gonna just check my sky, see that it's dry. Take a look at any of your yellows. If your sky is all the way dry, you can come back and make some more color up there if you want. You can make some more white for clouds if you want. You can come in and give it a little bit more character. I'm cleaning all that green out of my brush, wiping it off, and I see that my yellow up here got a little bit muddy. So if that happened to you, all you're gonna do, and I'm mixing a little bit of white in with my yellow this time, I'm just gonna come back up and get a little bit more of that yellow in. So you saw I did quick shaky strokes again. I can also come and get my sky back around there if I want. Maybe I want my light purpley just ever so slightly back in there. I can come and do that too. So again, we want to make sure before we get our mountains in that we like where our sky is at. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more white into my sky. I think I want just a little bit more pink right on this side here too. So again, my pinky tone was my orange, my yellow, my white, and my red all mixed together. So I had that peachy tone first that I did in the sky, and then I just added a little bit of red. I'm going to go ahead and just get a tiny bit more of that tone in my sky as well. So quick brush strokes of that. Take a look at where your sky is. That's going to be our most important part. It's our biggest feature here because it really is bright and stands out. So you want to make sure your sky looks really vibrant. I'm going to leave my sky there. And I'm going to clean off my brush again. Now my mountains start as purple. And you can see I have these kind of triangle-y shapes coming and moving around. I'm, again, using my big brush. I'm going to take my purples, my blue shapes that I've mixed up already for the water, for the sky, all those different tones. And I'm going to get those on my brush. And kind of decide where my mountains go. Again, take a look. You don't want to cover up anything that you really love. So if you have a spot in your sky that you think is just gorgeous, you don't have to have your mountains be exactly like mine. Now you can see I'm using my brush sideways here and just kind of wiggling down and making these kind of triangle-y shapes, these pyramid shapes. You can roll them over a little bit. I'm going to come in and try and get all these different hill shapes here. Now, as you go, I'm just getting that top line first, because if I really hate something I do here, I can move it still, get it in another position. But I'm going to wiggle down and get those shapes in for my mountains. You can see I'm doing them a little bit different from that one to this one. I like to play around and work with where my sky is. And each time you do this, it's going to be just a tiny bit different. Your sky might move a little bit from one spot to the other. You don't want to cover up what you like in your sky. So now I'm just going to continue across, making these shapes. Some have more rounded, some are a little bit more triangle shape, and right off the side of my canvas. Now, I need to fill those in. Again, I said we have all those different purples that we made before, so you could go either a little bit more blue or a little bit more white in them, or a little bit more red. I'm going to go just a little bit darker right now, so I don't want them to be exactly the same color as my sky, which they're blending in right now a little too much. You can see there's not much contrast there. I want to make sure they're not the exact same color as my water either, so I'm just trying to find a nice balance so that I can see this. And I'm just going to come in and do really quick strokes down from my edge. And you can see I'm moving my brush all over the place. I'm trying to get some texture in there and some movement when I come to fill these mountains. So bring some long strokes. Maybe I have a hill here that I want to be in front and it comes all the way down, so I brought my brush all the way down to the water. And it's okay if you overlap your water a little bit like that. I'm going to make this hill right in here have a little bit of texture to it, so I'm going to come in, and I want this hill now to be in front of it. So if I want something in front, I'm just going to make that stroke go in front of the other stroke. Quick strokes like this to fill in. I'm going to make sure to use up all that paint on my brush. Now, when I'm doing these quick strokes, I'm looking at them but not worried too much, because we are going to add the texture of the snow and the reflections of the light on top. But what I want to do is kind of pay attention to where my strokes go. If I have a stroke that goes down like this, I've decided that that hill's in front. Now, when you are doing these strokes, those strokes are going to kind of dictate how your hill goes. So again, I can move my strokes around. I'm using my brush flat, just that tip with color on, and kind of pulling that color around. That's how I'm filling in my hills. Once I get these all the way filled in to that water line, I'm going to let them dry. See how the colors turn out, see how those lines look different. Remember, I went into different purples. I never cleaned my brush off in the water in between those colors. So each time I picked up color, you could see a little bit of variation going on in my colors. That helps these hills look like one's in front of the other. Those strokes, again, I'm using the tip of the brush and kind of dragging it and pulling it down. That's really helping get that texture. Now, I have this beautiful little white path coming down in my water right from my hills. I'm going to clean up my brush really well. My mountains are going to get some water and some other color, but they're too wet right now. So what I'm going to do is pick up just some white. Again, tip of my brush. I'm only using this big brush so far. You could switch and use a smaller brush if you like. My water is dry. Taking my brush sideways. And I've gone just a little to the right-hand side of my center. I'm going to drag my brush sideways, back and forth along my canvas, getting some white in my water. Now I'm going to come about just a little further down in my water. You can make this go a little further across if you want at the top. Maybe cover where the mountains and the water meet a little bit. We're going to add some islands in here, so we are going to cover more of that up, but if you have a big space, go ahead and cover that up. Now, while this is still wet, I'm going to pick up some of my white and yellow mixture that I did before, so my lighter yellow tone, and I'm going to do the same thing in here, with a little bit of that light yellow. So we're trying to get all these beautiful colors from the sky reflected in our water. I'm putting those beautiful colors in there. I also want some of the pink colors that I had in my sky. So the fluorescent orange, yellow, white, and red. And some of those orangey tones in my sky. So I'm going to mix those up. And here I'm not going to go as far across, I'm just going to do little strokes of them. Now if you want your lake to have a little bit of a wave to it or movement to it, you could make these lines have a little bit of movement. I'm going to make mine pretty smooth. So little bits of the orange tone. Remember, we're going to add these islands still, so we might cover some of this up. So get a little bit of that orange tone. I'm going to get a little bit of that pink tone in there. See how this is looking. Maybe you want a little bit more white back in your water. You could go ahead and get a little bit more white. Now my white mixed in with my pinks right there. Since my pinks weren't totally dry, I don't mind that, but if you don't want it mixing in, just give it a second to dry, and then you can come back in and get those strokes really bright. So a little bit more of that white coming back in. I have some beautiful texture going on. You see on the original I had these other little strokes coming in. I'm going to wait a second to get those strokes because my canvas is too wet right now right there. But I do want to get a few other strokes in my water. I have these dark purple strokes in my water. So my brush has all sorts of colors that I just added. I'm going to give it a quick swirl in my water, wash it off really well, dry it off on my paper towel, and then I'm going to mix up my blue and red together. And you could make it a dark purple, you could make it a light purple. Again, it's personal preference if you like more blue or red in your purple. But I'm not mixing any white, and I'm just going to take and do a few quick strokes. These strokes, I'm following the arch of the water a little bit more. But just a little bit of texture in my water down here. Now, we have these beautiful little islands coming in front. I have one that's in that dark green tone on each side and one that's our light green tone. Now if I do my dark green tone one first, even though it's in the back on both of these, I'm going to have trouble getting my light green one in. So what I am going to do is outline where I want my light green one, outline where I want my dark green one, and then fill them in. So my light green, again, I'm wiping off my brush. I don't have much paint on it. You might need to give it a quick clean in the water because we just were in purple. My light green is my yellow and my green. And these islands come just a little bit below the water level where my mountains meet. So my mountains come in right back here. You can see that maybe about 2 fingers down from there is where those islands start. The first island has a pretty smooth bottom, and it comes right up into my mountains, making these big triangular bump shapes. Again, I'm using my brush sideways. You can see how I'm just using that side of the brush, brushing down, and then I'm going to just quick fill in. You can fill in with more yellow, more green, whatever tone you like. I have some oranges that come in, but I'm going to wait till I get that black or that dark green hill. So it's kind of like a carrot shape with a little bit of bumps and ridges. Now on this other side we have the same thing. This one starts almost level with this other island, maybe just a tiny bit lower. It comes in about 4 fingers of mine from my edge. And then it comes down like an arch from that mountain line. And fill in. Now you can see I picked up a little bit of my white right there when I went in. I don't mind. If you're picking up a lot of color, you could slow down a little bit. Paint a little bit slower than I am. And I just filled in that whole mountain. Now, or the whole little island in front of my mountain. Now I need to get these 2 that are behind it that are darker. I'm not wiping my brush off. I'm just going to come back into my green and just a tiny bit of black in my green. So I have a dark green now. I want it to stand out from this light green. The first one comes right up behind this one, comes really close to the water line, and then just flat back in. I'm going to darken mine up a little bit more so that you can see that on camera, but they're 2 different hills. 2 different islands here. So I have 2 different little islands on that side. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this one. This one's coming up right at my mountain line. And comes across pretty far. Again, the top edge of these little islands has some movement, so it has a little bit of a wiggle. I just wiggle my brush to get that shape in. But then the bottom edge goes flat back in, and I'm just pulling my brush flat right back in. Okay. Now once I get those in, I have a little bit of that dark color on my brush. I'm just going to dab some of it off. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of blue with it. So I still have some of that green and black. I just want a little bit of blue with it, and I'm going to add a quick little shadow under my islands in the water. Just very slight. Again, I'm just brushing back and forth sideways, making it just a little bit darker right at the edge of where those islands meet the water. Now, my two light green islands have some fluorescent orange on them. So I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of fluorescent orange on my brush. So make sure you don't have too much. And I'm just going to come in and touch that top edge of my lighter islands and pull some of that orange. Now if you like that orange, you can put a lot of orange in there. I'm going to get a little bit more on this one. Again, just kind of pulling it down on that top edge, really making sure that these islands in the front, even though I filled them in first, really stand out from the ones behind. In order to get them to stand out a little bit, that orange is really going to help put them in front. Now, I want you just to take a look at our painting right here. See how it's looking. We are just missing some snow and some reflections of the sky in our mountains, and then all these beautiful wildflowers and some of those reflections in the water. My water is dry enough to add these little strokes coming down. So I'm going to go into that right now. I'm cleaning off my brush. I'm going to dry it off on my paper towel. I want to get that green out of it. Might take a few times because I have quite a bit of green on my brush. Now to get these little strokes, I have some in the pink and the white, some in the yellow and the white, some in the orange. I'm just going to go right into my colors. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, a little bit of my orange, or a little bit of my pink tone, and just come right in and pull my brush down. A nice little pull down is going to give that little streak of color. You could go in pure white, or again, you can do that mixture of colors. The pure white really stands out nicely. Do just a few of those. I like the light yellow, so the yellow and the white. I'm going to pick both up on my brush. Just a little yellow, a little white. And I'm going to come in and do some longer strokes in that yellow and the white. So some beautiful reflections of the sky. Now with my yellow and white, I'm also going to come in and just do a few quick strokes back and forth. So just sideways here of the yellow and the white. There we go. A little bit more color in my water here. I'm going to come in and get that beautiful color in my mountains. I have to clean off my brush. I, again, don't have much paint on here, so I'm just going to wipe it off on my paper towel. And I'm going to go right into my white. Now, just like we filled in the mountains, I'm going to come in and quickly fill in white for the snow on them. So I'm just kind of wiggling my brush sideways down. I got a little bit of yellow that I didn't clean out, but I'm going to leave it because it has a little bit of reflection from the sky. That's fine. But I'm coming in and deciding which hills, again, look like they were standing out in front a little bit, and wiggling the snow just sideways on my brush on here. I'm not covering the entire hill with white. You can see I'm touching the tops. I could pick up a little bit of light blue, blue and white, or even a few of those other purple shades to come in and add some snow. Maybe I want, let's pick up a little bit more blue. I was trying to make a light blue, but I didn't quite get it. There we go. Go back and forth, fill in a little bit of snow like that. You have some options here. If you go over to your hills a little bit, I just went into my hill. I'm just gonna get my finger wet, and just rub it right out. Picking up white, and just wiggling it right on those tops, maybe down a few edges, make it look like there's a few edges coming down in your mountains. Here is an important time to step back to. You can go ahead and wiggle all these in and get too many in. So take a step back, see how your hills are looking. We're going to add a little bit of reflections from that sky in them too, to make them just stand out a tiny bit more, but you don't want to overdo all these wiggles. We got some texture when we painted them, which should be enough to make them look like beautiful mountains. So at this point, I'm going to come in and just get a few more wiggles again. I think now is time for some color in here. So the first color I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow. I have some bright areas of yellow that I want reflected down in my snow on the top here. So I'm going to get a little bit of yellow right on the top there. Have some pinks and some other shades reflected down into my water or onto my hills, so I'm going to go ahead and get some of those shades. Mixing a little bit of that pink again that I had before. Using the side of my brush still, I'm just getting light touches of these colors coming down. I have some of those oranges and pinks reflecting right up here. Picked up a little bit of that fluorescent orange tone. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of white because it's not quite mixing with my color right now. Come in and get a little bit of that reflected. Now again, it's important to step back from your work. Take a look and see how your colors are looking. You can always go back in and add a little bit more if you see an area that doesn't quite have enough color, but you want to make sure that those colors are blending beautifully and spreading nicely across your canvas here. I have some more pinks that I see that I can reflect down, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you may also have some areas that you want to make a little bit darker. Now, before we had just our dark purple, which was our blue and our red. I could even darken it up just a tiny bit with just a pinprick of black. Black goes a long way, so you don't need much. And I could add just a few little areas of dark tones in here, just to really bring out my hills. Now I'm again just using that side of the brush very lightly, just kind of touching it to my canvas and moving it around. I'm going right where my water is in between my land here too, making that stand out a little bit more. Right about in there, I'm going to let my mountains be. I think they look beautiful. Now my focus is going to be all these beautiful little flowers coming out. We've used almost the entire time here, or I have used the entire time here, my big brush. Now I can move into my selection of smaller brushes. So you have a small flat brush and a round pointed brush. This round pointed brush is great for making those stems and some of these flowers. This flat brush will also give you another texture so that you can pounce some little details in. I'm going to start with these longer little flowers coming up. I'm going to pick up some yellow on my small flat brush and some orange. Now you may need to pick up a little bit of white too, just to make these colors stand out. So I'm just kind of getting all those colors on my brush. And to make these taller flowers, I'm coming in and I'm just going to set my brush down like that. Now, again, just set your brush down like that to get the top of that flower. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of white with my mixture again. It's going to help that color stand out against the bright purple that I have going on. And I could choose to have as many of these flowers as I want. I'm starting with that top petal that sticks up. And I like these coming pretty far up into my setting. These are kind of my tallest of flowers. And when you're at this point too, you can make up as many flowers as you want. I made up a couple flowers to look like wildflowers filling in. But maybe you want to actually fill in some of your own flowers, create some of your own flowers. Go ahead and do that. This is just what I came up with here. You might have better ideas. You might have more ideas than I did. So again, just touching that tip of the brush down to make that top of the flower. And then for the sides of the flowers, I am going to change to the orange. I didn't even wipe my brush off. I'm just going to pick up the orange and come back in, and I'm going to touch it down on either side, just like that. And like that. So I'm going to go across and do that to all those little tops that I just put everywhere. Either side of it, using my littlest of brushes. And pulling up into it, just kind of smushing down and pulling up a little bit if you need to. Now on this flower, the only step I have left is I have a little red center. So I'm going to take just the tip of my brush, put a little bit of red on it, pull a little bit of red down right at the center of all of those little pieces that I just did. A little bit of red right in there. And then I can come in and make my stems. Now, so my stems stand out a little bit differently than the grass. What I did is I picked up a little bit of white on my brush and a little bit of green on my brush, and then just pulled a stem down. And notice my stems don't go all the way down to the bottom. They have a little bit of movement. You can also make blades of grass coming up in other directions here. We're going to mess up that beautiful smooth line that we have. So you can have some plain greens, some of those greens and yellows. You can see I'm just going across and adding more little strokes, not just those stems. And my little grass blades here that I'm moving around overlap a little bit. They go different directions. Some are just for those stems, some are going to be other areas that just fill in. But using that little brush. And once I go ahead and get all these stems in, I want to get some other flowers in. I'm going to show you some of these other flowers I have. But again, you might be a little bit more creative than me. You might have more flowers that you can think of. So I'm going to go ahead and keep adding a few more blades of grass in green and white. Notice I'm going all different directions. Really trying to get rid of that arch that I have for my water and my land meeting each other. I don't want that to be a perfect little arch, so I'm just adding a few of these strokes to kind of soften that up a little bit. Okay. Now, for my other flowers, I have these little red flowers. Those little red flowers I'm going to move up in size of brush, just to my medium-sized brush here. And I'm just going to dot down 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move over and do a few of these, and they can overlap. They can be next to each other. You could space them out if you like these flowers best. you could do more of these flowers. I'm just going to do a few of those across my canvas. And if you ended up doing a little bit more land than I did, maybe you have a little bit more space to do these, I'm just doing those 3 little pounces with my brush. I could even pounce in the opposite direction. Instead of up, I could pounce 1, 2, 3 down. But I'm going to do a few more of those. Get those spread across my canvas. And then I'm going to take my little brush again and just get a little tiny dot of black right in the center of each of those. Right in the center of all of those flowers. Now some other flowers that I have in here are some little pink flowers coming up. I'll show you how to do those. I have some little yellow dots and some other dots to fill in. So I'm going to clean off both of my brushes. Wipe them off on my paper towel. I'm going to come in and make my pink again. You might still have some pink on your lids or on your plastic. I just needed to refresh. And I'm going to do some little pink flowers. And I'm just going to pounce my brush kind of like a triangle. And down. And remember, the flowers overlap each other. Some might be in front, some might be behind. So it is okay to have them have some movement in there. But I'm pouncing just these little pink flowers. I could pounce some white flowers the same way. So just kind of touching the tip and pouncing in a triangle shape down. I have some of these actually in yellow and white as well, so choose the colors that you like best. If I'm doing them in pink but you don't really want pink on your canvas, don't do pink. I have some of those. I'm going to actually wipe my brush off and do some in a light yellow. So again, my yellow and my white. And I just like mixing a little bit of white with that yellow because that yellow is pretty transparent, so that white just helps anchor it. And now I'm just pouncing some of those in the yellows and the whites. And you can see I'm starting to really fill in here. I'm starting to get a nice garden, wildflowers coming in. I want a little bit more going on. So like I said, you could do these in plain white. Maybe I want a little bit different texture in here. So I'm going to actually just come in with my little brush and do some white dots to fill in a little bit. Really looking at that arch line, getting a lot of little dots right near that arch line. Some little dots in purples. We haven't added any purple down into our garden, so I'm going to mix again my red, my blue, my white for a lighter purple. I'm going to do some dots to bring that purple right back down in this area as well. And then I'm also going to do my yellow and my orange and my white all on my brush at once. So I just picked up yellow, orange, my white, gave them a quick swirl, didn't over mix them together, so might be a little bit more white, might be a little bit more yellow. And I'm going to pounce with my little brush. 1, 2, 3 together. So another type of flower in there. Or you could do 4 little squash marks like this. Very technical term, but that's what it is. Just kind of pressing down and getting a shape using the brush, letting the brush tell you what that flower looks like. Now, my garden is almost done. You can see I have lots of little different types of flowers down there. I need to add a few more stems in. Now, I'm going to add stems in my dark green mixture, which is the green and the black, my light green mixture, which is the green and the yellow, and some plain green, some white, but I'm just really going to fill in. And if you like a flower, you don't need to add a blade of grass in front of it. You can add stems to all your flowers. I'm not going to add stems to every single one of my flowers. The idea of stems is kind of implied just by these little lines coming in. I'm making sure these lines go up above my water line. So really just trying to fill in the space and make it look like there's a lot going on down here, even though we didn't do too much down here. So take your time, get some beautiful strokes. Make sure they have movement. Not all my lines are straight one direction. They crisscross. They have movement. I have some that are really thick, some that are a little thinner, going all the way across this whole base. Really making sure to get that bottom. Like I said, you could do some white lines. Those stand out beautifully on that base. You can have some lines that come up above your garden here into the scenery. And then take a look. You might want more flowers. Maybe you really like these tall flowers and you want more of those going across. Go ahead and add what you want in here. Really make this piece yours. If you are really good at those flowers, you could add tons of flowers in here. If you want that scene in the background to be a little bit more vibrant and not so many flowers, you don't need to add as many. So at this point, I'm going to call mine done. I think I have enough going on in there and have all those details that I wanted. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and happy painting!